By what audacity do you suppose you can determine and establish as an evangelical that I'm not a Christian? How is it possible? You know the name of our church. Mm-hmm. You know how we feel about Jesus. Why in the world would you not know better than that? Why would you think we're not Christian?
Well, Bob, there's a long answer and a short answer to that, and unfortunately our culture and society almost demands the soundbite that gives you this quick yes or no and then a real quick sentence, and that should solve the whole dilemma. But I think it's a much more complicated issue than that. So I'm going to try to weave some thoughts here, but by all means, let's interact over this.
Okay.
I don't want to do a lengthy answer here, but the idea that Mormonism emerges on the scene in 1830 and presents a unique perspective of God revealing additional Scripture in a short manner of time, certainly, and you can't deny the influence of the distinction that polygamy played in early Mormonism with the Puritan culture of American society in the early 1800s. These kinds of things and this unique stance and certainly the message of the first vision that all other creeds were an abomination to God. Early Methodists, Presbyterians, Baptists, Lutherans began to hear this message as it grew slowly at first and really began to discount Joseph Smith as a false prophet. You would know today that if somebody were to rise up in the world of Mormonism and proclaim himself a new prophet, that modern-day Mormonism had gone awry, that Thomas S. Monson had fallen from truth, and that there needed to be a restoration of the restoration, that most Latter-day Saints would not welcome that message and say, oh, he must be right. They'd say, this guy's a nut. And the Protestant culture of upper state New York and Kirkland, Ohio, and various other parts along the east really saw Joseph Smith in that same kind of way. Who does this young kid thinks he is to denounce all of Christendom with a wave of a hand, with a quote-unquote vision that he had that nobody can prove, and with the emergence of a document called the Book of Mormon? So I think, is it fair to at least say that the way Mormonism emerged in the early 1800s really presents a tension for Protestants, mostly Protestants, but in time Catholics, maybe even the Orthodox Christian community, to say Mormonism really set itself apart from us. We didn't exclude you until more recently. I think we talk about this a lot too, the phenomenon of rejecting Mormonism as a Christian faith as more of a 20 or 30-year-old phenomenon, to be honest with you. But how does that historical picture, am I accurate in that, or am I making stuff up there?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think if you had searched the scenes in the 1830s, if you had read the papers, my guess is you would never have found anywhere the statement, Mormons aren't Christian. Now, I think the people in the area disagreed dramatically with Joseph Smith and his followers. Clearly, that was what they had to say was
rushing them out from town to town.
Yeah, that's right. They had a way of encouraging them to go to other towns. It worked for the most part. But I think you would have never seen, I think the Latter-day Saints of the 19th century would have been absolutely stupefied if they had heard, you're not Christian. I think most of the folks believed they were Christian, different kind of Christian to be sure, but I think they believed they were Christian.
You think that the Protestants of Joseph Smith, they perceived Mormonism?
I think they perceived Mormonism as an aberrant or unusual form of Christianity.
In the literature, I've never read that. I get more of a clear hostility between Methodist ministers and Joseph Smith.
No question there's hostility, but what you don't get is the idea, A, you folks aren't Christian, B, you're a cult. And of course it's really not until, as you indicate, it's not until Walter Martin writes his book, The Kingdom of the Cults, in 1965, it's really not until the 70s that this idea, 1970s, that this idea begins to grow up. I was raised in Louisiana. All my friends were Baptist or Methodist or Roman Catholic. I don't think it would have ever occurred to any of my friends that the Millets weren't Christian. I think they would have said, well, they're kind of different, but they're not, there's no question they're Christian. I think that's a relatively recent idea. And I think the problem with it is it creates misunderstanding and it misrepresents some things. For example, if you say to me, I don't think Latter-day Saints are a part of the traditional Orthodox Christian church, I would say, you're right. We aren't. We are professing Christians, but you're right. We are neither Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, or Protestant. The problem with a soundbite, as you said, Greg, are they or aren't they, is this. I'm not so worried about what you think when you think Mormonism is not a manifestation of Christianity. I'm a little more worried about the person on the street, the man on the pew. When he hears Mormons aren't Christian, what does he think? Does he ask, does that mean they don't accept the New Testament? Not true. Does it mean they don't accept the divine birth of Jesus? Not true. Does it mean they don't accept the atoning mission, the resurrection, the second coming as true things? No. That wouldn't be, if a person said that, it wouldn't be true in any way. And so here's a good example of where a quick answer intended to be a bit sensational, to use the word like cult, which is a very negative way of let's just close this conversation down, I'll just call you a cultist.
It's never used as a compliment.
No. You're one of the finest cultists I've ever known. It just doesn't work.
Bob knows this, but I've had the privilege of being interviewed in various contexts on TV or radio, and once I had the distinct privilege of being on a national Canadian radio program, a Christian one, where I was talking about a new kind of relationship, a new kind of conversation between Mormons and evangelicals that avoided the soundbite approach to defining one another, and yet, tried to be true to my tradition and understanding of things. And I got a lot of good feedback from those calls that came into the radio program. But there was a lady that called in. She was very disturbed. She said, this pastor, he's far too generous to the Latter-day Saints. He's too friendly. He's too kind. He's too pleasant about Mormons. And you have to understand, sir, these people don't even believe Jesus died on a cross. So I responded ever so politely on the phone as I was calling in the interview. And I said, Madam, where do you think that they think he died?
It was actually in a chariot crash.